Picture this. You are looking at this massive 3-story mansion in a really upscale neighborhood of Calcutta.
Okay.
And it is completely sealed off from the outside world by these 15-foot high walls topped with like glittering, jagged shards of glass.
Wow. Intense.
Right. Inside, this place operates almost like a clean room in a microchip factory. But instead of keeping out dust, they are keeping out anything that violates this incredibly strict, uncompromising religious purity.
Right, the dietary restriction.
Exactly. No meat, no fish, not even an egg has ever crossed the threshold.
Okay.
Any contaminant from the outside world is treated as a total catastrophic breach.
It's a completely controlled environment.
Yeah. So now imagine a 3-year-old girl raised entirely inside this pristine, airtight bubble, and suddenly she pushes away her vegetarian meal, looks her caregivers dead in the eye, and demands fish and rice in a rural dialect she has literally never, ever heard.
I mean, that is the kind of scenario that just completely shatters a family's reality.
Absolutely.
Because, when you're dealing with child psychology, you expect normal developmental milestones, maybe some regression during stressful periods.
Sure.
But an entirely alternate identity demanding taboo foods. That completely rewrites the rules.
It totally does. And that is exactly what we are unpacking in today's deep dive.
Yes, it's a fascinating one.
We're jumping right into the opening chapters of Amitav Ghosh's novel, Ghost Eye. The mission for us today, for you listening, is to explore this intense collision of historical turmoil, rigid family dogma, medical skepticism, and actual rigorous academic research into reincarnation.
It really hits all those marks.
It really does. And to help make sense of the totally impossible case of this young girl, Varsha Gupta, I've got our resident child psychology expert here.
Glad to be here.
Let's just dive straight in. How does a seemingly normal childhood meltdown turn into a case study that literally defies modern science?
Well, to figure out what's going on in Varsha's head, we really have to first look at the environment she's absorbing,
Okay, yeah. Set the scene.
So the Gupta household in September of 1969 is, it's essentially a pressure cooker.
It is a fascinating historical moment. I mean, if you look at the macro context, the world in 1969 is really looking outwards and upwards, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Neil Armstrong has just walked on the moon. There were these massive protests against the Vietnam War. And strangely enough, from a climate perspective, the Earth is incredibly calm.
Right, the data on that is wild.
Yeah, the global average temperature hasn't changed since 1877, and CO2 levels are sitting at a mere 325 parts per million. So the globe is stable, but society is shifting.
But, and this is the key, if you zoom into the micro context, like inside the walls of the Gupta mansion in Calcutta, absolutely none of that global news matters.
Right, it's just background noise to them.
Exactly. They are entirely consumed by a crisis happening 1,000 kilometers to the west.
We're talking about the Ahmedabad riots.
Yeah. And to really understand the family's anxiety, we have to impartially look at this historical backdrop. In September 1969, severe communal violence broke out between Hindus and Muslims in Gujarat. Hundreds of people were tragically killed, and whole neighborhoods and commercial districts were burned to the ground.
And the Guptas are in Calcutta, right, but they're connected to it.
Yes, they live in Calcutta, but they are a family with extensive commercial and familial ties back in Gujarat.
Oh.
So for them, this isn't just abstract news on a radio. Their own warehouses are literally burning.
Wow.
The violence is directly threatening their livelihood, their wealth, and the physical safety of their relatives. It puts the entire household on a total razor's edge.
You can physically feel that anxiety in the house when you read the source material. The author describes these 3 heavy black rotary dial telephones.
Oh, the phones, yeah.
Just having one phone in 1969 India was a huge mark of privilege, but they have 3. And they treat them practically like religious shrines.
They really do.
The family literally burns incense under them. They just sit around holding their breath, waiting for these scratchy, terrifying trunk calls, those long-distance connections handled by manual operators, just hoping for any news from the West.
And that creates an atmosphere of constant suffocating dread. You can imagine a child absorbing that.
For sure.
And you have to layer that dread on top of an already incredibly rigid family structure.
Right. The patriarch.
Yeah, the patriarch of the family, known as HH, has built this massive industrial empire. But he enforces the strict religious observances of his late mother, who was deeply devout.
I want to pause on that for a second because their vegetarianism isn't just a dietary preference like we might think of it today.
No, not at all.
It's an absolute moral imperative of nonviolence, right? Like, they go to such extreme lengths that HH personally monitors the gardens to make sure the gardeners aren't harming earthworms or grasshoppers when they dig.
That's exactly right. The philosophy places a massive emphasis on nonviolence toward all living beings. So the household's purity is directly tied to their moral and spiritual survival.
Okay, wait, hold on. If you're picturing your own toddler or, kids are basically sponges, right?
Oh, 100%.
So if there is an atmosphere of constant dread in the house, people whispering about violence, panicking over phones, couldn't a 3-year-old just be absorbing all that tension and acting out just to get attention?
That is always the logical first assumption.
Right.
Children absolutely absorb household tension, and it usually manifests as regression. Things like bedwetting, sleep disturbances, or just really intense tantrums.
Which is pretty standard.
But what happens with Varsha on September 20th goes far, far beyond a typical stress response.
Let's get into the actual incident. So it's midday. 3-year-old Varsha, who is usually this very equable, easygoing kid, is sitting in the pantry with her brother. Her nanny brings a bite of flatbread soaked in this bright yellow lentil stew to her lips. And Varsha just aggressively slaps the hand away. The stew splatters all over the floor.
Which on the surface looks like a classic toddler move.
Yeah, just regular tantrum.
But then comes the linguistic glitch.
Right. She doesn't just whine or cry. She declares in a loud, clear voice, "I want rice and fish. Give me some fish."
And the language she uses is key here.
Exactly. She says it first in Hindi, and then she abruptly switches to Bengali, a language the family definitely does not speak among themselves. She clearly says in perfect Bengali that she wants to eat fish and rice.
You have to imagine the shockwave that sends through a house where they protect earthworms.
I can't even imagine.
The mere concept of fish is completely abhorrent to them. And the noise brings her mother, Deepika, running in.
And Deepika is already stressed out of her mind. She's been interrupted during her private henna application time.
Right, the tension just boils over.
The situation immediately escalates. Deepika is so overwhelmed, she gives Varsha a slap across the face, literally leaving a wet henna imprint on the kid's cheek.
Which is awful, and a normal toddler would burst into tears at that point.
Of course, but Varsha doesn't.
No.
She looks her mother right in the eye with this cold, blazing, adult-like anger and says, "That is not my mother. My real mother's name is Shorna. She doesn't live here. Our home is beside a river."
As a psychologist, this is the moment that makes me sit up.
Really? Why?
Because this entirely defies normal child development. When a toddler throws a tantrum, it's driven by frustration. They lack the tools to regulate their emotions or communicate a need.
That makes sense.
But Varsha's anger isn't a meltdown. It's precise, it's coherent, and it's rooted in a fully formed alternative identity.
Like she actually believes she is someone else.
Exactly.
Oh.
She's perfectly calm when she claims she knows how to catch fish with a net. Organizing an alternate reality with specific names and geographic locations requires a level of cognitive development a 3-year-old simply hasn't reached yet.
Of course, the Gupta family isn't sitting there marveling at her advanced cognitive development.
Oh, definitely not.
Their immediate reaction is basically a witch hunt. They assume someone on the staff must be feeding her fish in secret and teaching her these words.
Which is a natural paranoid reaction for them.
Right. They interrogate the nanny. But the irony is, the nanny is a widow who follows strict traditional customs. In that cultural context, she hasn't touched meat or fish in years, and she never leaves the compound.
So she's definitely not the source.
There is physically no way she smuggled fish into this fortress.
So the staff is cleared. The family is terrified and completely out of their depth. So they do what anyone in that situation would do. They look for a rational medical explanation.
They need a doctor to fix it.
They need a doctor to tell them there's a physiological reason for this madness.
Which brings in Dr. Monty Bose, the family pediatrician. And Monty is like the ultimate man of science.
Oh, yeah. He's very grounded.
He's Western educated, plays tennis at this exclusive club, and he is a strict materialist. Meaning if he can't measure it, weigh it, or put it under a microscope, he fundamentally doesn't believe it exists.
Right.
He shows up, assuming it's brain fever, maybe meningitis. He runs her through a battery of tests for cognitive impairment. He asks her colors, names, ages.
And she passes perfectly.
She's completely lucid.
But Monty is incredibly thorough. He sits down with her and starts asking about this other house by the river.
Okay.
He asks, "If you live there, why did you leave?" And Varsha casually replies, because I died.
Wow. Just like that.
Just like that. And when Monty asks how she died, she says she was bitten by a snake.
And here's where the story shifts from a psychological puzzle to a physical impossibility.
Yes, this is the turning point.
Monty, still acting as the thorough doctor, asks her to show him exactly where the snake bit her. Varsha points to the left side of her ribcage.
And he actually checks.
He leans in with his magnifying glass and finds 2 tiny circular birthmarks right where she's pointing.
It's incredible.
No, let me push back here. If you're listening to this, you might be thinking, well, birthmarks are incredibly common. Babies have all sorts of weird little spots, strawberry marks, whatever.
Sure.
Couldn't this just be a total coincidence? A smart kid notices a couple of dots on her ribs and spins a story about a snake?
It could be, except for the specific medical anomaly that Monty instantly recognizes.
What's that?
The birthmarks, which in medical terms are often essentially dense collections of blood vessels that form visible marks. They are the exact shape and distance apart as the puncture wounds of a venomous snakebite.
Okay, but still.
But as Monty points out, snake bites almost always happen on the extremities.
Oh, like the legs or arms.
Right. People get bitten on the legs, the feet, maybe the hands while working in a field. A snake bite directly on the rib cage is highly, highly unusual.
Wow. I didn't think about that.
It's this incredibly specific physical evidence that just breaks Monty's materialist worldview.
He can't explain it.
Looking at those marks, this doctor, who proudly says he deals with real things, gets so spooked that he actually packs his bag, tells the family the problem isn't physical, and admits he cannot help them.
I love that image. The rigid man of science literally running away from a toddler.
It's very telling.
But luckily for us, he goes home and tells his wife, Shoma Bose. And Shoma happens to be a psychologist who is currently collaborating with an American professor named Dr. Catherine Booth.
Yes, from the University of Virginia. This is a crucial pivot in the narrative.
How so?
We move out of the realm of religious panic and medical skepticism, and we enter the realm of rigorous academic research. And it's important to understand how Dr. Booth operates.
She's not just a ghost hunter.
Not at all. She's not a fringe mystic looking for ghosts. She's a former Marine Corps psychologist. Her approach to what she calls cases of the reincarnation type is entirely empirical and incredibly dry.
I was fascinated by her methodology when I read the source material.
It's very thorough.
She doesn't just listen to the kids' stories. She travels to the specific villages they mention. She blind tests the children to see if they recognize people from the alleged past life. And she checks municipal death records and autopsy reports to see if they match the child's claims.
She treats it like a real investigation.
And she is highly skeptical. She famously dismissed a case where a kid claimed to be the reincarnation of a famous holy man.
Right, because of the motive.
Exactly. She points out that's a massive red flag because there's social status or financial incentive to making that up. It's the ordinary lives, the poor fisherwomen, the farmers. Those are the ones she actually takes seriously.
Yes, she applies the scientific method to a phenomenon that seems inherently unscientific. And when Monty Bose pushes back on this, demanding a theoretical explanation for how a memory could possibly transfer from a dead person to a new baby, Dr. Booth uses this brilliant defense.
Oh, this is the Niels Bohr quote. She quotes the famous physicist, saying, "Everything we call real is made of things that cannot be regarded as real." It's pitched as this big mic drop moment, but let's actually unpack what that means. Why is a psychologist quoting a quantum physicist to explain reincarnation?
It's a profound point about the limits of human observation. Think about atoms.
Okay.
In quantum mechanics, we know that atoms are mostly empty space, and the particles inside them are governed by probabilities, not absolute locations.
Right, it's all very fluid.
Exactly. If you look closely enough, the building blocks of the universe seem entirely fluid and unreal. Yet those atoms make up the very solid, very real chair you're sitting on right now.
Oh, I see where she's going with this.
Dr. Booth is arguing that just because we don't currently have the instruments to see the mechanism of memory transfer, how a consciousness moves from point A to point B doesn't mean the resulting solid fact of this girl's specific verifiable memory isn't real.
She's saying science is a method for studying what happens, even if the how is currently a total mystery. And Dr. Booth and her mentors have found undeniable textbook patterns in these cases across different cultures, and Varsha fits them flawlessly.
She really checks all the boxes.
First, the age. These memories almost always emerge between the ages of 3 and 5. Second, inexplicable linguistic abilities, like speaking an unlearned dialect. And third, and most chillingly, the physical carryovers.
The birthmarks.
Yeah, those birthmarks or scars that perfectly map to the fatal entry wounds recorded in the past life's autopsy.
Which is what brings Shoma Bose into the Gupta mansion to formally interview Varsha. And during this interview, we see just how deep this phenomenon goes.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Varsha's pronunciation actually shifts entirely. She stops using the standard word for house and uses a very specific rustic dialect word. She perfectly describes a traditional mud house separated from a tidal river by an embankment.
But let's play devil's advocate again, because the sources debate this too. Could Varsha just be a prodigy? I mean, we have math prodigies, musical prodigies. Could she just be a linguistic genius who absorbed a regional dialect from a passing servant and used her high intelligence to spin a very convincing story?
It's a valid hypothesis, honestly. But it falls apart entirely when Shoma looks at her haptic memory.
Haptic memory.
This is where Shoma realizes she isn't just dealing with a smart kid. Haptic memory relates to the integration of tactile feedback and complex motor skills. Think of muscle memory.
Okay, like riding a bike.
Right. Varsha literally knows the taste and smell of different types of fish, despite never being near one. And even more surprisingly, she mimics using a traditional curved kitchen blade.
The kind used for preparing fish, right?
Exactly. It's a blade attached to a wooden base. You sit on the floor, grip the base with your toes, and slide the fish or vegetables against the blade.
That sounds dangerous.
It takes a lot of practice. Varsha squats down and perfectly mimics gripping that base with her toes and processing a fish.
No way.
That is a highly specific, complex motor skill that requires years of repetition to build into muscle memory. A 3-year-old simply cannot fake the neuromuscular pathways of a grown woman.
That is wild. So if we accept the evidence that this is actually happening, what does this all mean for the big picture?
That's the big question.
Does this prove the traditional religious concept of karma? This idea that if you live a good life, you move up the ladder, and if you live a bad life, you move down.
Well, according to Shoma's academic data, no.
Really?
When she finally sits down with Varsha's father, Abhay, she drops a bombshell. The empirical data does not support karma as a moral meritocracy.
Interesting.
These chains of rebirth don't seem to follow any cosmic rules of reward or punishment. From a scientific standpoint, it appears entirely random.
Except for one terrifying pattern.
Yes, a drastically disproportionate number of these documented cases stem from violent, abrupt deaths, murders, suicides, accidents, and animal attacks like snake bites. Shoma posits that it's almost as if people whose lives are interrupted abruptly have this intense, visceral drive to come back into the world to finish what was cut short.
And because that drive is so visceral, Varsha is essentially starving herself. She absolutely refuses the vegetarian food.
She's fading fast.
She is in a genuine, life-threatening psychological crisis. So Shoma, stepping in as her therapist, has to offer a prescription. And the solution she comes up with is just unthinkable for the Gupta family.
It is the ultimate taboo for them.
She suggests a compromise. Shoma and Monty will pack fish and rice in a lunch carrier, drive it to the Gupta mansion, and park their car outside the 15-foot walls.
Right.
Varsha will be brought out, put into the parked car, and allowed to eat the fish there.
It's an immense compromise.
Yeah.
But it's the only functional way to protect the strict vegetarian purity of their home while indulging the child's desperate past life yearning.
They don't have a choice?
They literally have to bend their reality to accommodate hers or just watch her waste away.
It's such an incredibly vivid image. This ultra-wealthy child, wrapped in privilege, sneaking out to a parked car just to frantically eat the simple food of a poor fisherwoman she used to be.
It's incredibly cinematic.
It perfectly encapsulates the tension of the whole story. You have the Gupta family's strict religious reality on one side, Dr. Mani Bose's rigid scientific materialism on the other, and sitting right in the middle is the undeniable physical and linguistic evidence of a 3-year-old girl who breaks both of their worldviews.
If you're listening to this and connecting it to the bigger picture, it forces you to ask a really uncomfortable question.
What's that?
What happens when your deepest belief systems are challenged by something sitting right in front of you? Do you adapt, like Varsha's father, Abhay, who is willing to break generations of rules to save his daughter? Or do you panic and run away, trying to force the anomaly back into a box you understand?
It's a lot to process. We tend to think of memory as something stored purely in our brains, completely bound to our own lived experiences from birth onward.
Most people do.
But if a 3-year-old can inherit the exact taste of a fish she's never eaten and the physical scar of a snake bite from a life she didn't live, What unrecognized memories, irrational fears, or unexplainable physical instincts might you be carrying around right now that don't actually belong to you?
It really makes you wonder.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.